Hey everybody, it's me. As you know, required in this course are a number of lecture hours, and I thought this would be a good place to insert a little 20-minute lecture. So I want you to get a nice little cup of coffee and have a seat, relax, and just listen to me. You know, when each of us are presented with SLOs, student learning objectives, the instructor sits down and decides how to meet those objectives. The objectives contain proficiency in research, perhaps, or sentence construction or paragraph development. And it's up to the instructor to determine how that content will be organized so that the objectives can be met. There's also a little addition to that that is sometimes overlooked. It's called preferred objectives. And that means above and beyond those objectives, items of proficiency that an instructor wants students to understand. So, I've been teaching since Cher was a child, and I've always had the same philosophy. I want you to realize your brilliance. I don't need you to see how brilliant I am, but I want you to see your own brilliance in assignments that are interesting and fun and still you're learning. And so we come to this unit on creative writing. In a survey course where you are given assignments to perfect and master writing skills, written expression, there's a room for all different kinds of expression. And I have decided many years ago to include creative writing as part of my curriculum. This is not only fulfilling the objectives for research, paragraph development, topic development, and so forth, it is also allowing you to move into critical thinking in a creative way. So here we have this particular exercise. Now here's the deal. When I'm writing expository essays, argument essays, I am going to appeal to my reader. As you've seen me say throughout the course, I am a reader loyalist. I don't want my reader to have to do anything but read what I've written. I don't want to have them stop and say, where'd that come from? Where'd that quote come from? How does she know that? I want to be able to see where that reference came from. If I'm writing an expository argument essay, such as a persuasive essay, I have a bias. Why did I want you to learn bias at the very beginning of the semester? Because bias is in everything. Everything. And so I wanted you to know that from the beginning. If I'm writing a persuasive essay, I want to say, yes, somebody else has a different thought, and I'm going to give them some credit. But here's what I want you to do. If I'm writing a theory essay, one theory is as good as the next. And so I'm going to build a foundation for my theory and want you to be able to say, yeah, that just makes a good point. It's a problem solution. There's a problem and there are a million solutions to it. I've evaluated 3 and I've decided that 1 is the best. That's bias. I want you to agree with me. Now in creative writing, the narrator is telling a story and the narrator only wants you to see what they want you to see. They want you to focus in on one thing that a character says. Well, in the 24 hours of a day, that character said a lot of things, but the narrator wants you to see that one conversation. And that's bias. And so when you create your own character, you're building an entire world for an individual to live in. There's great power in that and responsibility. Your reader is trusting the narrator to tell the story as an objective bystander. There's no such thing. So we're going to want to take the narrator's word for it. Yeah? Okay, so you've decided what kind of an essay you're going to write, and I want to share with you an experience that I had. I've done this assignment a very long time. Back in the day, before computers, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I spent some time getting pictures out of magazines. and I took them to our fantastic librarian who laminated them. So for years I had those out on tables, and the students would pick the picture they liked best, and they would create a story around it. One day, one of my students came up to me and said, "Well, why don't you do one, Miss Hall?" And I said, "Okay, pick one for me." So they came to me with a picture of a clown in a straitjacket. You know, a straitjacket is one of those things that put crazy people in. So I thought about it, and I thought, man, a clown in a straitjacket. And I didn't think much more about it, but I woke up with an inspiration. And that is when I came up with the character of Charlie Patterson, who had been a rodeo clown who lost his mind. Now, at that particular time, I had never been to a rodeo. I know it's embarrassing for me to tell you that. Please don't share it to any of my Texas relatives. But I had never gone to the rodeo. It wasn't important to us. We just didn't go. So the first thing I had to do, of course, was go to a rodeo and experience the light, the sounds, the colors, the shapes, the people. And I took notes, copious notes, pictures after pictures with my little Kodak camera, back in those days, and met some of those folks. And then I I went to this restaurant. If you head out from Oklahoma City and you're driving up to Tulsa, there's a very famous little cafe called Biscuit Hill, and the servers still wear those little outfits with the hats and the great big name tags and all kinds of pins that they wear and all that kind of thing. And there was a young gal there, and I watched her and observed her, and I went, that's Charlie's girlfriend. And that's where Brenda came from. And then I decided, well, where was Charlie when he lost his mind? Well, he was at the rodeo finals. Do you all know what a rodeo clown is? Well, a rodeo clown is there to make sure that the bull rider does not get killed by the bull when he falls off. And so they have these clowns they're colorful, they can distract the bull. So they're in the ring with the bull rider, and they will, when the rider's thrown off, they'll distract the bull, and so that the rider can safely get out of the ring. What happens is they call themselves bullfighters rather than rodeo clowns, but the bullfighter ends up getting gouged, all kinds of things. Well, I went to the website for the Bullfighters Association of America. Didn't know there was one, but okay. And I just sent out an email, and two famous rodeo clowns wrote me back, and it was Alan Nelson and Jim McLean. And they told me stories. They emailed me stories and stories and stories. And of course, I got their permission to use those stories, and I drew up a little contract saying that if I ever finished that novel, and if it ever got published, and if it ever made a dime, they would get this amount of percentage. They both said, well, we don't want anything. I said, no, right is right. And they weren't co-authors, but they do get money as contributors. So on I went with these stories, because what happened was Charlie Patterson made it all the way to the rodeo finals in New York City at Madison Square Garden, when this little love interest that he had, not Brenda, the ever faithful Brenda, but this other gal that had been popular and gorgeous in school and was a cheerleader. And there he was at the rodeo finals, and there she was. She had showed up after having dumped him before. And now there she is in the audience, and she's wearing this bright red get-up, and his attention is distracted. And the bull rider falls off the bull and is gouged. Really, I mean, like might probably die. And it was all Charlie's fault because he was distracted by that girl in the audience, a flaw he had had in his character from day one. And then he lost his mind, and they took him to Bellevue. Well, As it turned out, there I was going to New York City that particular year to take my students on a Broadway tour. So I took some time to myself while they were off doing something, and I went over to Bellevue with my camera. And Bellevue now is a men's home for men who are challenged. And there I am, me, going, what can I come in and see? Can I look around? Can I see things? They had a actual judge courtroom there. And so if you got sent to Bellevue back in the day, they would, after a few days, have a hearing before a judge right there in Bellevue in the courthouse, and they would determine whether or not you were crazy and whether or not you should be admitted to permanent status in Bellevue. I didn't know that, but here comes a whole plot about Charlie in Bellevue. How are his buddies going to come and break him out of Bellevue? It's a lot of fun. It's Mad Camp and so forth. But I wouldn't have known that. Now, also, I wrote this. It was difficult because I had this as a recurring rodeo in Sweetwater, Texas. Now, I've been to Sweetwater, Texas. I'm West Texas also. They don't have a year-round rodeo, one that stays place. Usually they travel around. So the rodeo goes to some place for 5 days and then they move on to the next. So he needed to have that stability of a home turf. So how am I going to find out how in the world that happens? So I create this rodeo that takes place in Sweetwater, Texas, and it's owned. Who has money in Sweetwater, Texas to own a rodeo? That's right, a rancher. What do I know about ranching? Nothing. Well, there's a college, as it turns out, where folks who want to learn to be ranchers can go and get a college degree. And I happen to have 3 students who wanted to learn how to be ranchers. So their families and I, moms and dads and me, all went together to this college, this university, to present these it was 2 guys and a girl who wanted to be a rancher, to present these folks as scholarship candidates to their school. And I'm in the middle of writing a novel, or coming up with this bone structure, the outline for a novel that contains a rancher who owns rodeo. And I'm asking a million questions, taking notes, taking pictures. And so that's how I learned about ranching. And so all that's research that goes into writing a narrative. In my case, it was a novel. In your case, for this assignment, it's going to be a short story. How long is that short story? I don't know. However long it takes you to tell it. It depends on how you do that structure. But you see how much that's aligned with bias, research, understanding a character. When I taught drama for many years and we did a play, the students who were playing a part had to write a defense of that character, whether it was the little sweetheart ingenue or whether it was the antagonist that they were playing. They had to write a defense. I only did it because, right? Okay, so one of the things that I want you to work on is the kind of story you want to write. That will be inspired by part in the picture that you choose. And the picture that you choose from all those choices that I've given to you will be your title page image. After that, of course, you're going to add all kinds of pictures, and you're going to see examples from me from Knights in Special Armor, which is what I titled my novel about the bullfighters, the rodeo clowns. So as you think about what would you like to be writing about, I want you to think about the kind of story. There's been a tendency, and you know there would be a tendency for a few students to pick a picture that looks like it's a happy couple and to write a happily ever after story. Well, you and I both know that there's no such thing as happily ever after. It takes a lot of work. As soon as a relationship takes form, whatever kind of relationship it is, it takes work. But is it unrealistic to write one of those stories with a happily ever after ending? Well, tune in to any Lifetime show and you'll see 100 of them. Look on Lifetime and maybe they jumble things up a little bit and change things here and there. but the plot's still the same. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back again. Or boy meets boy, boy loses boy, boy gets boy back again. Or whatever combination. There are no new stories. What there are an infinitesimal amount of characters. So you are going to create a character that is unique and operating within a plot where they need to learn a lesson. And when that lesson is learned, whatever the lesson is, it'll either be the ending of them or, save it for the sequel, it might be the beginning of them, of their new life. And that's what you're going to be writing. How will you craft that? Can it be a murder mystery? Absolutely. Can it be a romantic comedy? Sure. Can it be a children's story using one of those cartoon images that I include in there? Absolutely. Can it be the story of, can you take stories of animals, have them talk and reason and go through a journey and learn a lesson? Absolutely. The sky is the limit. What you want to do first is decide one of two things. Either you go through the images and you pick the image first and that inspires the story, or you think of a story type that you'd like to write and find an image that goes with that. You're going to find two files of images and more added all the time, and I want you to pick one of those because I know those will work. And when you think, well, I want to use other pictures, use those other pictures in the story. So there are some requirements for this. There's some things going forward that I want you to do, but I want you to understand the importance of this, and that is that you allow your left and right brain to work together. The right brain is very creative. The left brain is that logical progression. If I create a character and I have them in the room, I'm responsible for them. Where did they go? If in the next moment the guy's talking to somebody else, what happened to the other person that was in the room? It's logic. Who's telling this story? Do you have a narrator telling the story? Are you telling the story? Are you the protagonist? And what's going to happen? There needs to be a twist, something unexpected. Otherwise, we have what's called a straightforward narrative, and that's never going to be effective, right? I had students in the past, not very many, but a few students in the past who write a story. She was beautiful. She was the prom queen. Then she married the wonderful guy. And then they went on and had wonderful children. And then she had a successful career. And then she changed into another successful career. And they were so much in love. And then her husband died. And she had to figure out how to handle that. And she found a way to handle that because another new perfect man came in to her life and married her. That is a success only journey. One success after another. And as you can see, you might have gotten a little bit of attitude while I was going through that whole lineage of what she went through. Nobody goes that way. Nobody. And it needs to be as close to real human existence as is possible. Everybody gets their knees scraped. Everybody has a terrible, terrible disappointment. And as I say to people all the time, everybody has a first day of school. You know, everybody's confounded by a locker combination or feels like they don't fit in. Everybody, I don't care who you are. So that needs to be in the play. It also needs to roll along where we think something's going to happen, but all of a sudden a twist and a turn happens and we go the other way. And so in Charlie Patterson's life in Knights with Special Armor, he loses everybody. Everybody turns away from him. He has just burned every bridge because he was cute and a little bit of a scamp, you know, and he's just alienated himself from everyone. And so I've taken away everything from him that came so easily to him. Now, what's he going to do? Now, I want to tell you one other thing. I'm not coming to you as somebody who says, I want you to write just like I write. Do not do that at all. I'm giving you examples of how I go through things. I want you to determine your own brilliance. I took this class once at graduate school called Professional Fiction Writing. And I wrote a really good novel during that time. And it was a very small class. super high, like a, I think it was English 6,000 something. I don't know. It was a highfalutin course, and I really went through the paces of writing that novel. Do you know how many publishers published that novel? None. Absolutely none. Do you know how many people published J.K. Rowling's first books of Harry Potter? Absolutely no one. But she was prepared to be homeless, living in a car with two kids in the back seat, taking her Harry Potter manuscript from one place to the next, just begging somebody to believe in her. Finally, somebody did, and they published it. But she has often spoken about all the naysayers who said, oh, Harry Potter's too young, he's too old, he wears glasses, the audience won't like him, there's too much fantasy, not enough realism, nobody's going to buy the, that whole thing. And then somebody did. War and Peace, one of the greatest novels of all time. I think he had 450 rejections before somebody took a chance on that novel. So I don't, I didn't make that big of a stab at getting it published, but the novel that I wrote is called Echo the Voice, and it's about a girl who's an alcoholic and a little drug addict, and she is blowing and going through the world, just tearing it up, burning candles at both ends. And when the end of her, as it goes, as alcoholism goes, it's fun, then it's fun with problems, and then it's just problems. And so when she gets to the point where it's just problems, she is going to just about ready to jump off the cliff, and she hears a voice, and that's the story. So one publisher wrote me back, said, this is a nice story, but it's too upbeat for today's, it's too downbeat for today's upbeat society. I went, upbeat society? We're in the middle of a war. There's poverty everywhere. We just had a recession. What upbeat, so I got a kick out of that. I got a kick out of a few of the other rejection letters, and I didn't feel bad about it because, it's a lot of work to get something published. So I'm just saying that to say, I don't know, I'm not the pinnacle of wisdom when it comes to this, but I do know how to embrace your brilliance. Part of the reason that there's a proposal for this assignment is because I want you to think about how you're organizing this story. There are some elements that are required. We need a theme. We need a recurring symbol. We need, some other things that are listed in there. And so those are included in your proposal so that when you get ready to write, you're not just rambling. Have you ever read a story that's just rambling? I have, and it's just painful. Your story needs to have a plan, an arc. Each character you create, once you create them, they're not just a cardboard cutout for the protagonist to talk to. They are a real person. And so you need to be thinking about that too. And that's what a proposal will do. I've written them every time I've written something. Everybody else who's ever written anything also started from a bone structure, an outline, a plan for how it's going to go out. And then you sit down and you're able to write it. This is one experience also where if punctuation wasn't your friend before, let it be your punctuation now. Punctuation helps tell your story. And I want you to make sure that your dialogue is clear. You can't just describe what characters do. Sometimes they got to talk. Somebody's got to say something sometime. And when they do talk, they need to each have an individual voice. And so I might have a character that's always saying dude or always saying bro or something like that. And that's their little moniker. That's how I know that person is talking. And there's a cadence. Remember that poetry unit? I'm going to put that poetry link right back down here below this because I want you to maybe think about looking over that, listening to the poetry. Turn on that page where I have all those poems read and just sit there and close your eyes and just listen to the cadence of those poems. Listen to the rhythm of the poems. And then even sometimes I've written stories sometimes where I've had music playing in the background. And I'll change the music if it's an exciting scene. I'll change the music to excitement and I can, ride along with that. It's perfectly fine to dictate sometimes. The Word these days has a dictation thing. I've done that before too. But then I still have to go back and edit it. That's still going to happen no matter what. That's the other 50%. 50% is just the fun of creating characters, creating situations, anything you create whatever you want. It just has to have rules and has to make sense. The world of the story needs to have rules and it needs to make sense, right? Okay, so I know you're going to have a wonderful time with this. There's more tutorials as you go through all those pages that lead up to the proposal and then lead up to writing the actual narrative. And I want you to pay attention to each one of those pages. What's happened in the past is this, and that is where I've heard from students that, oh, they forgot all about it. They were given so much time to work on it, then they forgot all about it. So then they sat down the night before it was due and just wrote the story and proofread it just a little bit and submitted it. And that's okay. If the proposal was written ahead of time, I don't tell you to dictate how you spend your time, but you just cheated yourself out of an opportunity to really think something through, to really enjoy and embrace the creative rhythm of telling a story. Sitting down and doing it at the last minute, okay, but when are you going to have this opportunity again in a course? I don't know. I hope you take creative writing, and I hope you take it with somebody who will just embrace your brilliance. I hope someday you'll sit down and write a screenplay, and I hope you'll write that in the proper format so people can sit down and enjoy that. I hope you do all kinds of things with your skills and your brilliance. But this exercise, you've been given time to write the exercise. You deserve that time. You deserve time to have an education. It's your human right. And in an enlightened culture, we want our citizens to be literate, to be able to write and express themselves in written form. I wish I could express myself in written form in other languages, and maybe someday I will. It'd be just like me to do it, wouldn't it? Because one time I had a student years ago. I don't teach ESL, which is English as a second language, but I had a student who was put in my class, nowhere else for her to go. And so when she came to this exercise, she wrote it in Spanish. Now, I don't want y'all to do that because we have plenty of ESL classes available now, but she did, and she taught me how to read it. I said, you're going to have to teach it to me. So you're going to have to help me grade this essay by telling me what it is. So I learned a little bit of Spanish so I could keep up with what she was talking about. The descriptives, the words that are available in Spanish to describe a setting. Oh, it's fabulous. I think she went on to do something with that. Maybe, in publishing it on a website that is a Spanish website. I hope so. It's fabulous. But I want you all to write this in English, and I want you to really craft it, really think about your characters. And if you want to write a story that's very simple, where boy meets girl, loses girl, boy gets girl back again, and they live happily ever after, you can do that. If that's the best you can do it. But make it unexpected, right? It's unexpected. Against all odds, and for no reason at all, she took him back, or he took her back, or whatever happens. If you want to write a mystery, that's a fun format. And then you have your clues, and when you make your outline, you have this crime happened, and then you get to fill out in the outline when are clues revealed. And that way you're not just writing random. You actually know where something came from. Oh, so much fun to do. And I want you to have a good time with this. I really do. And I want you to spend some time in your cyber cafe sharing the image that you've chosen with other students and what approach you plan to be taking. And I think it's going to be a really lovely time for you. But I want you to remember that the goal is not to have something published and make millions and millions of dollars, or to write something that they will all love. The point of the exercise is to take upon yourself the responsibility of creating a life and letting that life blossom in a way that you direct, and telling that story in a way that you choose to tell the story, either in first person, which is limited because that means that only what can be told is what that person saw, right? So you can't ever write in a first person narrative, my mother thought she was really special. You don't know that. You don't know what your mother thought because you are only first person. You can only report what you see, what you heard, and what you heard said about what you saw. If you are an omniscient narrator that sees all and everything, then you can report what somebody's thinking, what somebody's planning, and what they determine at the end, right? And so your theme, I'm going to end with this. Your theme is, of course, the person is going to learn a lesson. What lesson is that they learn? My lesson for Knights in Special Armor, and I have that in a little whiteboard that I always keep right here. If I'm writing my essay and I'm in the middle of writing it, I have a whiteboard that I have right here, and it says, "Every good boy deserves favor." That's the theme of that story, couched in a rodeo clown who has more personality and charm than he should deserve, who has made his way out of West Texas and into the spotlight of national and international rodeo competitions as a bullfighter, and who has stories and stories for days and days and days. And I was able to go to a rodeo and meet Alan and Jim, and I met also a wonderful, wonderful older clown. And I patterned an entire character in the novel about him. And I have his picture, and it was just neat and yummy. The stories he told me, and he was just absolutely appropriate and charming and wonderful. And I created a whole character for him. So he became like the mentor in the story that people could go to for advice and things. You know, when you have people as mixed up as the people that I create, you're going to have somebody for them to talk to. So anyway, off you go. I have a couple of little assignments here below to get you started in creative thinking, and I want you to do those. And then I'd like for you to start that module proper by going every single page and work on this and give it some time and have fun with this. You deserve it. You deserve time to work on it. You deserve to be able to sit down with your coffee and create, create, create. Have fun. It's been good talking to you. That concludes this tutorial.